I'm going to start out. Uh, Today is September 11th, and I'd like to show that 22 years ago, I made some postcards to commemorate the 9/11. That the photo on the top there is actually a photograph that I took myself. I was standing there in front of the state insurance building, and I clicked that photo. And the one on the bottom is Rochelle Cavalli's hand, which is my wife. I use her as a hand model just to make her the Statue of Liberty. These two cards, one of the first cards of Manhattan is the Moonlight Over the Atlantic, which is like the #1 card for New York. The one on the bottom is an early Detroit. It's a vignette, like they're in the Detroit series runs from the early 1898 to 1899, and those cards are all like vignettes or multi views. Everybody knows that the front of the card was for writing on, and the address was the only where it went on the back. Those PMCs. These two cards, I just wanted to show that the different quality that Detroit was capable of doing. These postcards are little works of lithographic prints that were actually made by hand on a printing stones that they imported from Bavaria. They also had the rights to the photochrome business, which they got from Zurich, Switzerland. The Statue of Liberty on the bottom, I just really love that because it actually shows Bartholdi's concept of the Statue of Liberty, which was liberty enlightening the world. And I love Emma Lazarus' last line in the new Colossus. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. I just think it like really sums it up. But Detroit brought those clouds in there because they had control. The retouchers could do that, but no one knew the secret of how they were able to turn these black and white negatives into color. It was a guarded top secret. Only the printer who was printing them knew the process of turning that into color. And in order to do color, you need, they printed between 4 and 6 colors on a stone. Then they had to grind the stone down and redo it again after about 20 or 30,000 printings. It just is amazing that it actually happened. But no one in the company knew what was going on. Only the printer, because it was such a guarded secret. They couldn't let it out because, somebody would run off and, put them out of business. This is Ellis Island, and these are what it was like to process 5,000 immigrants in Ellis Island. Then the Castle Clinton down there, they turned that old castle into an aquarium. And you can see right here, there's a Pier A, which is still there. My friend Marisol has a sculpture that she did for the Merchant Mariners. We went down there together. She showed me that. I was like really touched. But this aquarium, you can see this is an interior shot, and this is also a contract card. Detroit had a lot of contracts with, educational contracts. They had business contracts. They had hotel contracts. They had railroad contracts. Rosanne asked me to emphasize the fact that a lot of these cards, the educational cards, were for colleges and universities and libraries. That's how they really made their money, especially towards the end when they went into receivership. They were surviving on the contract cards. That's how they were making their money. The aquarium, these are like two of the cards I have from the aquarium that I really liked. That one of the radiograph of a bullfrog. Wow, that was one of the hardest finds. It took me years to find that card. I mean, you're just looking at it, but what I had to go through and wait for in order to get that bullfrog, extremely rare. There's about 24 of those contract cards that they did for the aquarium. We're starting out in Lower Manhattan, looking up West Street. Now, this is what it was like at the turn of the century. There were all those wagons. They were loading and unloading. You can see the port for the Lackawanna Railroad was right there, and it's just amazing because that's like looking north on West Street, and you can see there's no high buildings along that side built yet. Then on the other side of Manhattan, there's there was the produce exchange, and the produce exchange was built by George Post, the architect, and they tore that down and put up number 2 Broadway. And it's kind of a shame because it had a beautiful lobby in it. And this is one of the first early skyscrapers, Whitehall building. This is right at the end of West Street at the Bowery. And this building, Henry Janeway Hardingberg did this building, and he also built many other buildings here in Manhattan. One of them was the Plaza, and but I love the name Janeway. This is the Municipal Ferry, which is one of the earliest ones where it was named the Brooklyn. That was just what they called it. There was also a ferry by the name of Queens. It was a maroon color, and then like in the 40s and 50s they changed it to orange because they figured that it was much better to use that color in a fog than the maroon. Then there's the U.S. Customs building down there, and that is a really spectacular building built by Cass Gilbert. And Cass Gilbert built a lot of buildings in New York. He not only did the U.S. Customs building, he did the Woolworth building, and then he did the Federal Plaza. He did a building on Chambers Street as well. But what's interesting about this is those 4 huge sculptures. They're supposedly marble. I don't think they really are marble, but those were by Daniel Chester French, and we know him because he was the one who carved Lincoln in Lincoln's memorial. But he didn't really carve it. It was the Picciarelli brothers, the Italians they had a studio up in the Bronx. It symbolizes the four seasons down there. You have Asia, Europe, America, and on the far end is Africa, and with a sphinx and a sleeping lion. They're very impressive. This is Bowling Green. Bowling Green is right at the tip of Manhattan. Someone wrote this letter. Wrote this on the postcard. I can't really see all of it on the screen, but you can read it if you want. It's this is the first Dutch park in New York. It was Bowling Green. This Hotel Washington here on the left, which is number 1 Broadway. They tore that down. And then over on the right-hand side is where all those low buildings is. They took all those down, and now they put up 26 Broadway, which was this building on the right-hand side. On the left, you're looking up the canyon of Broadway. You can see the Hotel Washington over here on the on the left-hand side. And all of these, the trolley and these things in the foreground are all superimposed. You know, this is like Photoshop before Photoshop. These guys were working with negatives. They could take things in and out. It was kind of interesting what they were capable of doing. Looking up the canyon, you can see the Singer building up there. They should have never torn that down. It was a Beaux-Art, the lobby was all marble. I mean, it was spectacular, but it was Mr. Singer, and the Singer sewing machine brought a lot of money into this country. And then on the right-hand side, you have Standard Oil. This is a very late card. This was very hard to find. I wanted to say something about when I got started collecting Detroit cards. Edward B. Epstein had a postcard collection, and he was the one that encouraged me to start collecting Detroit cards. And I'd also like to give a thanks to Gerald Mastro, who's supreme Deltiology #1 when it comes to Detroits. I mean, he knows everything there is. I'm indebted to him because he had this card. I didn't. It's in his collection. John D. Built this, I think, at 24, and it had a cauldron at the top, which had a flame in it, because he burned kerosene up in there. Because for advertising, he wanted you to look up there, see a beam of light, and think of light and heat, which was what he was selling with the kerosene. And he made his money on his biggest profit was on kerosene. And you can see down the street there is the Woolworth building back there. We'll get to that one later. But that card, the Standard Oil, was extremely hard to find. I never did find a copy of it, but thanks to Jerry Mastro, Captain Jerry, I have a copy of that. It has a little obelisk around the outside of it. I mean, it's really, and Carrier and Hastings were the ones who built that building, and they also did the New York Public Library, among other things. They also did the entrance to the Manhattan Bridge. I mean, those guys were great. On the left is the Bankers Trust. And then the next one down there, the tall one, that's the Equitable building. And that building is like really important because it changed the zoning law in New York. They took up the whole block and didn't let any light down for the people on the sidewalk. So the zoning law happened right after this went up because they wanted you to build step backs. And so they have the step back law that you have to be able to let light down to those who are walking on the sidewalk down there. The one on the right is the Broad Street and the curb brokers. This is kind of, you can see the stock exchange there. They were in competition at one time with all these guys on the street who were selling stock. And then here's JP Morgan's building. And that building was Trowbridge and Livingston did that building. And they also, let me see, they also did the Bankers Trust building. So these guys, somehow they were, taking up real estate or knowing who to go to for whatever. This is 23 Wall Street down there on the bottom, and you can see what it was like, people walking around. And Morgan never lived to see this. Actually, he went off to Egypt and he got something and he died in Rome, like two years before this was completed. Like, I think it was like 1913. The Trinity Church, wow, Episcopalian Church. In the background is the Shorty building, and that's also like 1896. I think that was one of the skyscrapers that went up back there. Its address is 100 Broadway. And then this is the New York Stock Exchange. You can see some vendors down there on the street with their umbrella and their hot dog stand. This is an aerial view of skyscrapers overshadowing Trinity Church. You can see the Shorty building down there straight ahead. And then the Empire Building to the right, the Trinity Building to the left. Trinity Church, I think, owned that building, and so they're heavily into real estate, and so they buy and build all over the place. And you can see the Trinity Building down here on the bottom with the Singer Building back there. It was interesting when Mr. Woolworth decided to put up his building at the end of City Hall Park. He wanted you to see the building from the top, from the bottom to the top, not like the Singer Building, which was locked in the buildings. You couldn't really see it from the bottom to the top. That's the Singer Building, and there's the Equitable Building. You can see this Equitable Building. This is also an architectural rendering of it. It's not a real photo. They probably got that from the architect in order to build that, or in order to print that, actually. You know, another thing is a lot of these things, there's buildings down here that aren't documented because they couldn't get at them close enough to photograph them. So they really don't exist. I've been looking for certain buildings and like they're not there. But this is you're looking at like cards that you're never going to see, and you're looking at just incredible, like this is New York. This is what Detroit did from like 1901 to 1925. So this whole, little tour that I'm giving is from that time. It's just kind of interesting to see, postcards, everything that exists on a postcard. So the postcards are really the universe in miniature. That's what they are to me. This so this is some harbor shots. I love this one, the Heart of New York, and it shows up there, that tall tower is the Singer Building under construction. I mean, it's amazing that it was documented. And then the one on the right is the Singer Building, and then there is one of Cass Gilbert's 90 West Street. He did that building. I used to live on the other side of that building. He did that building before he did the Woolworth Tower. Those sort of reddish colored buildings to the right or to the left over there, that's the terminal. And they tore all of that out of there in order to build up the World Trade Center, put the World Trade Center in there. And the one on the bottom, it's a skyline from Jersey. You can see the Chrysler Building. Actually, you can see the Bankers Trust Building. You can see 90 West Street. You can see the Springer Building. You can also see the Woolworth Building. And then down there is the Municipal Building. And the one on the right is a very early photograph of the Woolworth Building lit up, and I think the Singer Building is also lit. When electricity came in, they started lighting up the city, and this photo you can see on the right-hand side down there, it says New York Edison Company. I think that they got this photo from the Thomas Edison Company. But it's a beautiful night scene, and I love all and every Detroit night scene. They're just the most beautiful cards really printed. You can see what the Woolworth Building looked like. The Woolworth Building is 55 stories high. It's as tall as the Great Pyramid in Egypt, and it's made out of white terracotta. And the white terracotta, it wouldn't burn. So there was like, you went with the terracotta. And it's like a bottle. I mean, it's just absolutely, it's Gothic revival, but I don't care. It's just it's really gorgeous. And the little building on the right hand or on the left hand side down there, the little dark building, and the one in the next one, that's the post office that they tore down. But and it was really a big deal when this Woolworth building at night, totally lit. The President Woodrow Wilson pressed a button at the White House in order to light that building up. And then Mr. Woolworth sent down a couple train cars to bring up all of Congress for the opening. So it was like quite a blowout. opening night of the Woolworth building. Then we moved to St. Paul's Church. This is where George Washington went to church. And the building in the background there is the Park Row. That was one of the very early first skyscrapers to go up in New York. And at the time, it was the tallest building in the world. And like, nobody knows it. I mean, the one on the top is the post office. And on the bottom is City Hall. And that's a shot of what's called Park Row, which where all of the newspapers had, like the World newspaper, and they all had offices or buildings over there. From the news would come out of City Hall and then go to print. And so, and then you can see down at the bottom there, the back of the post office. I guess they were sending stuff out. It was all together right there. You can see the little wagons. And also there's a little sculpture of Nathan Hale down there, which they've moved that over closer to the to City Hall. This top shot is what it looked like at the seaport. And you can see the Brooklyn Bridge in the background back there. They're just bringing in goods with, you know, and wagons and whatever. And then the bottom one is City Hall. This is very early. This is before the municipal building. And the top one up there, the Hall of Records, that's they call the surrogate courts or surrogate house. It's also quite impressive. It was where they kept all the city records. Actually, I've been in that building, and you can just walk in there. It's like unbelievable. And the lobby's fantastic. They filmed a lot of movies in that lobby. The one on the bottom is City Hall and the municipal building, the new municipal building. And you can see down on the lower right-hand side, there's an entrance to the Brooklyn Bridge. They've torn all that out of there now. And then the World building there on the corner with the gold dome, they've torn that down too. It's gone. There's a shot of municipal building. And this shot is like over in Brooklyn, looking over to Manhattan from Brooklyn via the Brooklyn Bridge. It's kind of interesting, the trolleys on the bottom down there. I don't know. I don't know if those trolleys actually went over the Brooklyn Bridge. Looking east from the Singer Tower, this is what it would have looked like if you were up in the Singer Tower looking out. There was a point where they closed off. You could do this also on the Woolworth building. You could go up and look out, but during the war, they closed the observation deck because they didn't want spies going up there looking down over at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. You could see it from there. They didn't want that, so they closed it up because here comes these ships that they were building for World War I. I had to include this one. I went back and I stuck this in. This is Mott Street in Chinatown. I had to give some Chinese some credit here. It's the card in Chinatown. That little street right there is the street is 15 Mott Street. That little store is still there today. And this card was taken by the Barron brothers. It wasn't taken by William Henry Jackson, who was the photographer who controlled all of the photographs. In fact, they bought him his office and his all of his negatives to get Detroit started. They bought all of his glass negatives. He lived here in New York. I couldn't believe it. The guy, they called him Jack. He was unbelievable. He was a photographer who photographed during the Civil War. He'd go out and photograph the battlefields in order to plot out where they were going to have the battles. I mean, he was a surveyor, and that's what he was doing. Just unbelievable what he was up to. But Jack lived to be 99 years old, and he lived at the Latham Hotel here in New York on 28th and 5th Avenue. And he lived to be 99. Very interesting guy. But that little Doyle Street there was one of the most dangerous streets at the time. If you went down there, there was a chance you might not come back, because in those little shops and that, there were the basements that were all connected to one another. They had tunneled through to one another. And so you didn't know where somebody was going to wind up. You didn't want to go down that street. Oh, and here, these are very early These are called peddler cards, and these are highly sought after. They're very valuable. The top one is the first little walking department store. That guy was the sidewalk haberdasher. You could get things from him that he had hanging on him. And then there was the banana cart where they sold bananas. This is all like on the Lower East Side. And then they have, and these are all by Byron. He took these photographs. I think I only have like one Byron. No, I have two, but I think there's 5 or 6 of them out there. The Italian bread peddlers is a great one back there because it has bicycles in the window for those guys who collect bicycles. And then the L. Levy is definitely the Lower East Side, and that is an organ grinder. And I don't know if there's a monkey down there or not, but those kids are gathered around for some reason, and he's like the local hurdy-gurdy guy. I mean, and it's very hard to get that card. It's like almost impossible to find a copy of that card. And this is what it would be like. This is a group of peddlers, and they say ghetto, but this is actually the Lower East Side. And what it was like at the turn of the century, of like the people gathering around, having their photograph taken, and the fruits and the wagons, people hanging out on balconies. I mean, it's a really great photo. And then the one on the bottom is also, these are very low numbers. Like Detroit ran from like 1 up to 82,000 was their last numbers. Those are factory code numbers. And that's in the 5,000 series, which would have been 1901. So it's starting out, they show the yard of a tenant. You know, this is Monday morning wash. When you do your wash, this is how you do it. This is the Bowery Bank over here, and this was an entrance and an exit. Really great photo of a kiosk, and an entrance and an exit kiosk. And then the subway station is very interesting because the chair probably had an attendant, which they didn't put in there, and then you would pay to get in there. It's really great to see that. And then down the tracks there, that's a great photo of just, straight looking down the tracks. Detroit made the rails darker somehow to go down there. It was kind of interesting optically what they did with that. These were just 2 churches that I put together. Grace Church. Grace Church is James Rendrick did that, Grace Church over there. Beautiful stained glass windows in there. I've been in there. And then the Marble Collegiate Church, this is a very late number, and I really didn't have this card. I loaded it down from the internet because it was extremely hard to find, and I just wanted to put it in there as Norman Vincent Peale was running that place, and it's kind of interesting. The one at the top is Union Square. You can see not too many skyscrapers up there yet, but the one on the bottom is a really great Detroit. It has the Flatiron Building in there, and then it has the Metropolitan Metropolitan Insurance Company. And then over on the left, that little pointed building there, that's the original Madison Square. And so it's named Madison Square because of that building there. And that's just a great shot across, across the skyline. And this is the Metropolitan Building. And again, the Metropolitan Building at night. Again, the Detroit boys went and put some stars in there and lit that building up. I mean, it's great. I've never seen the top lantern up there lit up. It's just so beautiful, the dark. It's really, really impressive. This 8291 building New York skyscrapers. This is when the one at the one on the right is there's a for rent sign down there. This is the Flatiron Building under construction, is going up, and the one on the left is the New York Times building going up under construction. So they put these 2 cards together, and it's just like a really fabulous card. And the one on the right is the Flatiron on the corner of Winter's Day. This is the Woolworth Building, or the Flatiron Building, which was 1902, they Daniel Burnham put this building up. He was an architect from Chicago, and there was a lot of cars, or quite a few cars, called 23 Skidoo, which was at 23rd Street here, that the wind would catch on that building and blow women's skirts up. And so the police would have to come by with their clubs and beat the men away. Skidoo, shouldn't be doing that. It's a beautiful building. I mean, I must admit, and it just sold for like 150 million. And I think they're going to turn it into condos or into a hotel, which is sad, but because it's so iconic. I just wanted to give a shout out to my friend Miriam Berman, who wrote the book on Madison Square. She's an architectural historian, and wow, she did a great job on her book. This is the Flatiron Building, like an early Flatiron. You can see that little triangle at the bottom, down at the bottom, that sticks out down there. Supposedly, Edward Hopper did the Nighthawks from that restaurant there that was in there. The other building, I just put the other building in there because the windows all opened and they had awnings hanging out all over the place. So just a spectacular skyscraper. I mean, it's just like, and then the little tour bus up there is in front of the Flatiron Building. That's the Flatiron Building back there. And the one on the bottom is a cab stand if you wanted to catch a cab, and those were cabs there. And this is also a Byron photo because of the women. See how dated they look with their hair, with the long skirts and the hats, the big hats. This is 34th Street, and then there's Herald Square. These are like very early. The one at the top, the woman carrying the little muff there was during a blizzard. I think they had a really pretty horrendous blizzard at one time. The straw hats, they just put that in there with the carriage and the big pile of snow in New York. It's not like that anymore. Oh, here we go. We're now at the Waldorf Astoria. This is the first Waldorf Astoria, which is on 34th Street, and it was torn down in order to build the Empire State Building. And then on the right-hand side is the new Waldorf Astoria, and it's Art Deco, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Again, this is very early, or this very late card. There's no real pictures, and you could never ever get that far back from that building to take that shot. So they went with the artist rendering. Here's another artist rendering with the blimp supposedly going to dock at the Empire State Building. And the other thing is just a shot of the Empire State Building, which is Art Deco. Sorry, Art Deco. I'm a member of the Art Deco Society, and I'm also a member of the Terracotta Society. Susan Tunick started and founded the Terracotta Society, and I'm in love with her. She's so great. Then these, I just put in some bridges, like the Manhattan Bridge, the Williamsburg Bridge. It's just interesting to study the structure of these bridges, and this one at Hell's Gate. A lot of these things are, I don't know, they put a boat in there down there at Hell's Gate. That's not real. They superimpose that down there. Now, this is the Penn Station. They should have never torn this down. This was McKim, Mead and White, the top architectural firm in New York. And this was a spectacular building. And it was, I was never in it, but my wife actually, when she came to New York, she actually got to see it, and couldn't believe what happened to what they did to replace this. It was nothing. It was like a hole in the ground. I mean, it's just like unbelievable. This is the interior of that building, and the main waiting room, the concourse. This concourse is my number one most beautiful Detroit with the light up there and the floor. There's a little exit sign down in the bottom there. It's just, they should have never, it was a masterpiece. They should have never done away with this. It had so much light in it. And also, like, there's something spectacular about train stations. You know, like if you go to Philadelphia and when you go in there, it just takes your breath away. And I love the fact that Jackie O saved Grand Central, because otherwise they would have torn that down. I just like, it makes just the thought of it, I start to get sick. Also, that these tunnels, and this was the beginning of when trains first went electric. Before that, they had the steamships or steam lines, steam engines, and you couldn't run a steam engine inside, you know, like inside a train station like that. It'd smoke everybody out. This is the New York Public Library, the facade of it. And the New York Public Library, I know, it's Carrier and Hastings. That little figure at the top up there in the frieze is philosophy. There were other sculptures to come. This is in Bryant Park. This is back of the New York Public Library. This is the American Radiator Company, and it's a black building trimmed in gold. And when it went up a few years later after that, George O'Keeffe did a painting, The Skyscraper at Night, and it was this building. And it was built by Raymond Hood. And he was an architectural genius. And I'm not putting that lightly. He won a competition to build the Chicago Tribune Tower in Chicago. And while he was putting that up, he started putting this up. But the thing about him is that every building he did, you could never, each piece was a signature piece, but you could never tell that he had done it because it was so different from the last thing that he did. He didn't live very long. He only made it to about 53, but wow, he was like, oh, what an architect. Raymond Hood, yikes. This was the interior of the library. And this card on the right at the top is an overprint, and it's all the electrical work in this building was done by Lord's Electric Company. Those are rare and kind of sought after. Any kind of, you know, contractor cards or any overprints like that, because there just weren't that many. This is Grand Central. This building went up in 1913, the same time the Woolworth building was being built. They built Grand Central, and Grand Central, the sculpture at the top has a clock in it, and the clock is Tiffany. Wow, I wonder what that cost. You can see the interior. I love these interior views, these spectacular views. They're just just beautiful stuff. And this is another artist rendering of the New York Central building. This is also a very rare card. You'll be lucky you see that one. They're hard to get. Then we move into Times Square. This is the Times building where they dropped the ball. This originally, it was called Longacre Square up there, but when they put the Times building in there, they changed it to Times Square. It's amazing. And then this is a theater, the Hippodrome in Times Square. And then there's the Hotel Astor. It was also in Times Square. They've torn both of these buildings. They're gone. So these postcards are like, you know, one of the only little visual records of these places. Beautiful night scene. It's called the Great White Way. This is what it looked like in Times Square to turn of the century. And you can see on the left-hand side there is the Astor Hotel. Beautiful card, just beautiful. I'm going to show you a few buildings, and all of these buildings are missing now. This hotel, Marlborough, it's no longer on 36th Street. It's gone. This Park Avenue Hotel, it's gone. Hotel Victoria, it's gone. Vanderbilt Hotel, not there. There's Alpine, not there. The Knickerbocker. I think the Knickerbocker might still be up there. I have to check. The Belmont is gone, and you can see the Belmont. You're actually looking down Madison Avenue here, and then that building, the little red one right there with the point on it, that was the Murray Hill Hotel, which is a really swanky, beautiful hotel, and the interiors of that hotel are like really worth collecting. They're gorgeous. And the Hotel Manhattan, that was up near Grand Central. There's the this is around 42nd Street, the White Star lines, and then the banana boat docks. This is what it would have been like, them unloading bananas. And thanks to my friend Captain Jerry, I was able to get this card of the SS Olympic entering New York. This is 1911, and this boat is before they built the Titanic, and this was a maiden voyage to New York City in 1911. And then I put this little steamer, Henry Hudson, which was on the Hudson River, and you can see it's loaded with people. This is the Chrysler Building, which is made of stainless steel. I mean, it's unbelievable that they made a building out of stainless steel, and it's Art Deco. And it also, you see the step back here in terms of, like, you can't just put up a solid building anymore. It's like, you know, even in the 30s now, you have to step it back. And the other building, the Ritz Tower, I got this one off the internet. It's on 57th Street, another great building. This is St. Pat's. I just love that interior of St. Patrick's. I mean, it's just like breathtaker. And then these were on 57th Street now. This is the Hotel Savoy on the left-hand side up there. That was a really great place to stay. And then there's the Hotel Netherlands. That red building is the Sherry Netherlands, which they extended up. They built up on it, and the Savoy, they tore that down, and they put up the General Motors. They put the General Motors building up in there, and then that building now is where the Apple store is, where the Savoy is. And then this sculpture of General William Sherman down there is actually copyrighted by him in like 1903. He was still alive, and he was able to mount that up at the end of Central Park, at the entrance of Central Park. And then the one on the bottom, you can see it's on the right-hand side is the plaza there, and then down that little red one is Cornelius Vanderbilt's mansion, which they tore down to put Bergdorf Goodman up in there. Cornelius, they called him the Commodore, and it was for good reasons, because he's buried in Staten Island, where he started out. He got a little boat together and started making a little ferry run between Manhattan and Staten Island, and he had this little steamboat going, and he made some money, and then he was thinking about what else he could do, you know, with this steamboat or with the steam engine, and so he started to put it in locomotives, and wow, yikes, that's the railroads. The plaza, this is one of Janeway's buildings, which is really nice. And the one on the bottom, you can see the side of the. This is Central Park, but you can see the side of the plaza, and then you can still see the Savoy down there, and you can see the Netherlands, which was the Netherlands and not the Sherry Netherlands. This is an interesting thing. This is the obelisk in Central Park, and that obelisk is getting kind of in bad shape. So I came up with this idea to put it in a sky glass pavilion, and that's the pavilion that I designed in order to protect that obelisk, because that's the oldest piece of sculpture we have in America. Moses played around that obelisk when he was a boy, and we own it. I mean, I can't believe they got that over here. It's 220 tons. They had to get that thing. I mean, they had to build a boat for it. They had to like get it up the river. They had to get it over the railroad tracks, and roll that thing and get it to set it up alongside the Met. I mean, it's unbelievable story, and it's red granite, and it's the Egyptians, there was no, there was nothing to move heavy anything. And then to carve it out, I mean, how do you carve out? They used dorite balls, and they just beat them down, and then they beat them sideways in order to free it out of the stone or of the quarry, and then they had to get it out of there and had to set it up. I was friends with Christopher Gray, who knew every building in Manhattan. I told him that Thutmose III was my favorite pharaoh in the Valley of the Kings, and he goes, "Can I quote you on that, Michael?" And I said, "Yes, you can," because I've been to the Valley of Kings and I've seen it. But anyway, that was kind of interesting. But we really should take care of that piece. The one on the left up there is the first Metropolitan Museum. And the story goes is that when they were deciding to put they had the space in the park when they put in Central Park, and they went to the Natural History Museum, and the city fathers had a meeting, and they brought in the people from the Natural History Museum, and they brought in the people from the Met, and they asked the people from the Natural History Museum, they says, "Well, what do you have?" And they said, "Well, we have a bunch of bones." And then they turned to the people from the Met, and they said, "What do you have?" And he says, "We have a lot of priceless art." And so the Met got the location in Central Park. But that building is inside the Met. When you go inside the Met, it's in there. When you go up the steps and go to the left, you can still see those arches. It's amazing. And this, what happened? They took this wasn't on Fifth Avenue, so they decided, like at the turn of the century, William Morris Hunt built this building, which it's the Great Hall, and they put it on Fifth Avenue. You can see like the entrance is totally, this entrance is totally different, and the steps, they don't have the steps in there. The one on the bottom shows the extensions, the wings that McKim, Mead, and White built those wings on the north and south side of the Met. And this is an interior of the Met at that time, which you can see it's like that one on the top, that is the Jade collection. They called it the Jade Room. And the portrait back there is of Herbert Bishop, who was it was his collection. And he had about 150 these very rare, expensive jades, and they're all in those showcases. And I think, wow, and look at the room. I mean, I was like, wow. And then at the bottom, the statuary hall is now the main entrance, or when we go in there, they've taken all those sculptures and the tapestries and everything away. But that's what it looked like originally. It was designed for sculpture. And these were some portraits. This is some examples of art that the Met had at that time. This portrait of Benjamin Franklin, and that's a great portrait of Walt Whitman. The little one, the woman, the little girl drinking from the water fountain, or the fountain, and this other one is the sighting of a first air balloon in France, and it's in a Renaissance painting. I mean, it's kind of really incredible airmail postcards dropped from an air balloon are extremely valuable and extremely rare if you ever find one. The children playing in Central Park. This is the one of the ones that I own of the Byron brothers. And Central Park was very active to turn of the century. They had tennis courts. They had goat carts. They had maypoles for May Day and processions, you know, all kinds of, it was pretty heavy. And then the one on the right at the top up there is a sculpture of an angel. It's Bethesda Fountain, it's called. And it's the first sculpture in the park. And Bethesda was the angel of water. And I really love it. It's a really nice piece. And here we are, Rochester. We're at the Natural History Museum. These are very early. This 8943 is very early for the full length of the Natural History Museum. And the one on the right shows a little railroad track or an elevated in the corner down there. You can just barely see it. It's kind of interesting. And then they also had contract cards. And the number one card was this Baronosaurus with the little skeleton in there. I thought was really, really nice. And then this was extremely hard to find, this evolution of a horse. I mean, it was one of their contract cards. And then these were other contract cards that they did. And the sled, I just love the sled. You notice it has a little snowshoe on it in case you had to get out and walk. And the cape, the Hawaiian cape, they're made out of like very rare bird feathers. I mean, they're just really unbelievable. I mean, this is a Columbus monument, which is at the entrance of the park, and I'm not in for removing this. I want Columbus up there. I would never touch that piece. There's the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. This is a very early Grant's Tomb. I love this Grant's Tomb. It's very at sunset. It's really, really, really nice. And these are also very early cards. And Grant's Tomb is the largest mausoleum in this country. And here's a night view of it, which I think is really like, you know, in the moonlight. I mean, it's just like, wow, where would you ever see that? You did a gorgeous job on that one. And then there's Claremont at night. This was a hotel up there, and on the left-hand side, you can see the Grant's Tomb. And then this was the Claremont during the day. And this is no longer up there, the Claremont. And Detroit was really big in flags. They could print flags on anything, anywhere. And so they've done as many as 5 flags on a postcard. This is the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. This is an interior shot, and there's an exterior. And the library at Columbia University. That's the low library. And you can see it in the next card as well. Notice the telephone poles and the river back there. I mean, it's like, this is a library. This is another interior of an auditorium. It's very nice. And this Library Hall of Fame, it's still up there. The view of the river, but it's with battleships out there on the Hudson River. And you can see more battleships going up the river. This is the entrance to the College of the City of New York. And the Raceway of New York. This is like the West Side Highway, but it's way up there. Another view, this is really beautiful. I love the twilight views. It just creates such a mood. It's just really nice. The elevated on 8th Avenue and 110th Street. I don't know how they were able. I've looked at, you can go on the Library of Congress. Detroit at the end in 1936, the 40,000 negatives went to the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. But then they divided them up, and they took all of the negatives that were taken west of the Mississippi went to the Historical Society in Colorado. And then all of the other cards, and plus the foreign cards, went to the Library of Congress. And the Library of Congress has digitized all of the Detroit negatives. So you can go and look at them, just, put in Detroit, collection. But this, I looked at the negative of this the other day, and because I thought that horse coming at you, that white horse against that L, was superimposed. But on the negative, it's not. It's real. I think they waited till that horse was coming down that street to take that, to get that shot. We're there. This is New York Botanical Garden. They called it the museum at that time. And I just wanted to include that in there. And then the card on the bottom is the landing of the Henry Hudson, the little boat. That's the half moon that Henry Hudson came here on September 11th. I'm winding up my show now. On September 11th, 1609, Henry Hudson sailed up the Hudson River. So I thought I'd end my presentation with the little silhouette. These are references. This is my last slide. These are references of the Detroit publishing postcards. This is J.R. Burdick. J.R. Burdick was a deltiologist who, an ephemera collector who had a collection of the Detroit cards. They're all in the Met and they're in albums, and you can go to the print room and ask to see them, and they'll bring them out, and they handle them with like white gloves, and they have like velvet bricks, and they lay the things out. And I spent about a month or two looking at all the Detroits that they had. And these were two of the checklists that Jeff did. And it's kind of sad, like he mounted his postcards in the Met in albums by hand. He had a little desk that he brought in of his own that's up there. And on the last day, the secretary said, "Well, see you tomorrow, Mr. Burdick." And he said, "No, I don't think so. I'll catch you later," or whatever. And he went back to the Chelsea Hotel and died. And that was like the end of Jeff. But he did these little checklists, and this one that says property of the Bar Book Store, I got from Captain Jerry. I didn't have those others, and it was like, wow, I couldn't believe it that those are the three that exist. And the other book that James, that's Reverend Lowe. I've actually met him. He's done a lot in the postcard world. He's done a book on standard postcards. I felt very fortunate to have gotten to meet him. And him and Ben Papel wrote the first checkbook list for Detroit's. And then Nancy Stretshuttle did the next book. And it's more current and it has more numbers in it. I've actually got that book from her. It was one that she had stamped like years ago. And I don't know if she's still alive or not. I kind of doubt it. It's amazing that it's unbelievable that she did that book. I mean, I just, because of Rosanne said that there's 30,000 postcards, and they printed 7 million a year. I mean, imagine, by hand. And in 1910, they couldn't make them fast enough. They were selling so much. I mean, it was like unbelievable.
We stop for questions?
Oh, yes.
Late.
No, go hit me.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you very much. Those are really, really nice cards. We have some little time for questions. Anybody?
Wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah. Hi, Michael. Is anybody doing a picture book of Detroit postcards? Because the reference books you show here, if you look at them, they're just, well, not totally, but major element in them is they're just checklists of cards. Right. And the beauty and the variety of the cards is stunning. The Byron images I'd never seen before. I mean, somebody could make such a fabulous book. Has anybody, is that in the works for anybody?
Dave, I really don't know. I mean, the only person I know that is Jack Davis, who did the Schmucker book of the Detroit Schmucker cards. He also suggested that somebody has to do a book. It would be spectacular. I mean, if they did it right and it was really gorgeous. That one American Odyssey by Teschen, it's like, I think it's a $200 book, but they made the cards like full, like double page, and the pictures run through the gutter, and so it totally destroys you looking at the image. And I don't own a copy of it. And it's like, I really don't want a copy of it. Maybe, I mean, I don't, and it's really hard. I have a book, or I have a little postcard book published called Fantasy and Surreal Postcards, which I spent a long time trying to get published. And it was next to impossible because, the book has to have legs. They said, it's got to come off the shelf. People got to walk away with it. And it's like, until you get a book deal, or you have a small movie, or you do something that you get some publicity, that you get people interested in it, then they may do it. But otherwise, it's really impossible to get a book published. But it's not impossible. I actually did it, but I'm just saying, I wasted a lot of time and effort trying to do that, and realized how difficult. It's like you want to make a movie and you go to Hollywood. It's like, and you have the money to make the movie. Well, they're not interested. You want to do another Star Wars movie, and it's like, no, they don't want to do that. And you have the money to do it. You'll pay for it. It's like, no, they don't want to do it. It's like weird. I don't know. It's like it's very difficult. But it is, as you know, very nice having a book on a shelf, seems that you're an author of Gas Stop and soon American Chrome and the rest of them. It's nice having a book out there.
This is Rosanne, and I'd like to comment on that. And by the way, Michael, you did a tremendous job. And I just want to say that it was like, wow, I'm not familiar with most of the New York cards. So
right. Listen, I want to give Rosanne a plug for her wonderful presentation on Detroit Publishing Postcards. She did the whole history of it, which saved me a lot of time tonight talking about that. So I want to recommend that everyone go to YouTube and put Rosanne Goodwin, and that's 7 letters. It's ROSANNE, Goodwin, and just check it out. It's really worth looking at if you're interested in Detroit's.
And what I want to add, comment on, is the question about, is anyone going to do an updated book? I have a friend who lives in Arizona, and she primarily collects the Native American cards. And so for the past, at least 10 years, maybe 12 years or so, she and I have been discussing doing a book together. And we got permission of Nancy's husband. And I think he must have died in the interim, because we both tried contacting him, to just maintain the permission, because we didn't want him to think we were just taking her book and going forward.
And we do. No, but if it's a picture book, I mean, hers is not a picture book.
Right, and that was the layout we were going to do.
I don't think you need permission for that, because all of those, the copyright or whatever is run out on all that stuff. So it's all copyright-free material. So it's not going to cost you anything in terms of royalty or paying for any.
No, we just wanted to make sure he knew about it and blah, blah, blah. And so
I would be very interested in seeing her collection, because she got started by her father, gave her a couple boxes, and she went back and interviewed the remaining people who worked at Detroit. She actually, her and Jeff Burdick both went to Detroit and spoke to those people. And also, I didn't include, I wanted to show, there's a post, the guy who started the whole Detroit was William Livingston,
No, he didn't start it.
Well, he didn't start it, but he was a
took it
treasurer.
over. It was actually Husher who started it.
Started it. You're right.
And he was friends with William Henry Jackson, and they needed the most negatives they could get to be able to start the business.
Did you ever see this card? It's a Detroit card that is the William Livingstone Lighthouse Memorial, and he was so beloved by the citizens of Detroit that they built a lighthouse to him. And I thought, wow. And then they also made a postcard out of it. I was like really impressed.
So
It's Art Deco. It's an Art Deco lighthouse, and it's gorgeous. It's on Bell Island.
I just want to add that it would be with the image on one side, a small image, and then with the rest of the information. And I also want to let people know that if they look through the guidebooks, they can see that they're not consecutive. So if you were just looking for, say, New York numbers, you'd have to go completely through and find them all, put them together, and then
It's very difficult. That you can ask Dave about that sequential thinking of like how that works, because it's really hard to go by number. I mean, the numbers are there, but how you organize them and pull them together in order to show, the Boston ones, the Washington D.C., show the Indians. I mean, you show the contract cards. I mean, it has to be, divvied up in such a way that to make it interesting.
right, and that's what I've done with the Western ones, because that's my focus. And so how the glass plates got divided up was that Clarence Jackson, who was the son of William Henry Jackson, lived in Denver and didn't like the fact that they were all in Detroit. And he wanted them moved, so it was divided. With the Western negatives went to the Colorado Historical Society, and then the Eastern ones all went to the Library of Congress.
The Eastern and the foreigns.
Yeah, and well, the foreign ones really are just of Mexico. There's just a handful of them, and Puerto Rico, which is really United States, and Cuba. And so those all went to the Library of Congress because.
Well, what about Canada? You're not talking about Canada.
Those also, because Detroit Publishing Company had their agreement with the Company of Switzerland was that they had the agreement for North America. And there was another company in England that had the agreement for the British Isles. And then they had the agreement for, the Company just had the agreement for everything else. And they also had, before everything really took off, they did a lot of other companies' printing. So you might see other companies' works that really are photochromes and things like that. So
Listen, the thing that gets me about that, those things being lithos, they never figured out. We still don't know how they did the color separations. You have a black and white negative, and then they had to get 4 colors, and they printed as many as 4 or 6 colors. That's 4 or 6 stones. They had to be registered. They had to be run through. I don't understand how the printing, how they used an emulsion, like made the stone photosensitive and exposed the stone, and then was able to etch it out and then ink it up and then print it out. I I'm kind of curious as to how did they do the blue and the cyan and the yellow and the green, and then the last thing I know they put on was black, because the black focuses the whole thing. But it's kind of it's so magical to me that that actually happened. I'm still to this day trying to figure out how they actually did that. Because I did when I was in art school, I had a course in lithography, and we had like a heavy stock paper. We put it in a damp box, and you had to soak it, leave it overnight, let it dry out, put it up. You had to charge up you put you get your image on the stone with a grease pencil, and then you would put gum arabic on there, and size it up, and then wash it down, and then put some etching, some little acid or whatever on there, and it would eat the stone down a little bit. That it was enough that when you rolled the roller over, when you charged the roller back and forth, it would just stay on the image part of the stone. And when you lay the paper down on top there, and then by hand you took a hand crank and you cranked the stone through the press, and it would press the image on there, and then you pull it off, and there's your image. I mean, I understood all of that, but I don't get how they were able to do the color separations at that time. It's kind of like we're watching like silent black and white movies, and all of a sudden we move to Technicolor, and it's like, oh my God, that's what Detroit was, because to have a color print or something in color, I mean, it was like, wow, people went crazy over that, seeing that for the first time. And also Detroit was like 2 cents a card when all cards were a penny. So they called them the Cadillac of postcards. And I think one of the reasons why they're still around is because they're on heavy card stock. The card stock it's heavy, and they were also, I think that they were the ones that came up with the white border image, or white border era, because they were also printing pictures that they were selling on Fifth Avenue. They had a showroom there, and they were selling prints. Not necessarily. I mean, postcards were there, but the idea was to sell the prints.
The
I want
large
everybody
prints-
know that we have the club now has a Facebook group, WNY Postcard Club group, it's called, and I just posted links to 2 of Rosanne's YouTube videos. One's about the history of the Detroit Publishing Company, and the other one's about Detroit Publishing Company Cards of San Diego. So if anybody wants to get an easy way to find those links, they're on our WNY Postcard Club group in Facebook.
Oh,
The way to
And
share,
there's
you can share stuff.
There's also the thing that if you want to know who actually took the picture, attribution lists are only for the negatives, they're not for the postcards. So you have to kind of go back and forth with the negatives to the postcards. But Library of Congress has been doing a very good job of keeping up with their side of the attribution lists. And until, I'm going to say a few decades ago, but it's really been 40 years ago that with the collection in Denver they had lost the attribution lists. And when I did my master's thesis on the glass plates, they had found the attribution lists at that time. The building was shared. One half the block was the History Center, and the other half of the block was the State Supreme Court.
Rosanne, do you have that list? Do you have that list?
No, I don't. I only have it for California. I don't have, but Library of Congress has the Eastern list.
Right. No, I've seen they use the word contributor. They mean photographer.
Yeah, yeah.
They're listed on there, but it's really nice because you can go there and then you can date. It gives you some idea when the card was made.
With the exception that once they wore out the plates, they would send someone out to retake it. And the people who did all the work were not men, you know, in Detroit. They were women who did the added the colors from the notations that the photographers gave them and did all the editing, or as you said, the photoshopping for the pictures. So it wasn't just these guys who were doing the actual printing. It's kind of like how, you know, the Disney cartoon images would be really done by women, but the men got all the credit for them.
Yeah, it's so amazing that they had like 40 artisans working for them, but no one but the printer knew the process.
Right.
They kept them separate. They didn't want anybody to know what was going on.
Oh, Michael?
Yep.
This is Rochester.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering if the process was similar to a photographic process called dye transfer. And it's not used anymore. It was very difficult. And there they just, in order to get beautiful color prints, they used 3 colors: magenta, cyan, and yellow. And those would give you any color. I'm thinking of the photographic books by Elliot Porter, if you've ever seen those. He did for the Sierra Club. And the colors were perfect. It basically looked like a Kodachrome quality color image. Dave Freund might know something about.
Listen, I know that dye transfer because when I first got to New York and I made some postcards, I took them over and showed them to Dorothy Seiberling at New York Magazine, and she wanted me to leave my postcards with her, and I said, "Oh, I can't." She had a pile up over your head on her desk of what she was working on, and I realized if I leave them with her, I'll never get these cards back. And I said, I said, "Dorothy, listen, I can't really leave these with you." She said, "No, Michael, leave them with me," and she talked me into leaving them. So I left them, and two weeks later, they were in New York Magazine, and she had done an article called Trade Off, and they were like about 10 or 12 postcards of the World Trade Center that I had fixed up. And then she said that it was so hard because the cards that I gave her were offset, so they were dots. And so she said the Japanese printers, which she said that New York Magazine had the finest Japanese printers, that they had to do color separations for those cards, and they did it with a dye transfer. And so I sort of became familiar with the idea of dye transfer. And one of the reasons why I like the Detroits is because they're continuous tone, so they're not offset. I think it was Rosanne who said it. They came to an end because the 4-color printing presses came in, and Detroit at that point was a dinosaur printing stuff out by hand on stones. I mean, it was like the printing world was moving ahead, and unfortunately Detroit got left. And but they're like little lithographic prints, and they're continuous tone, and they're much more beautiful to look at than an offset or a chrome card.